Have you ever wondered why dealing with people feels so exhausting? Why that coworker who takes credit for your ideas makes your blood boil? Why your family member who always plays the victim drains your energy? Why strangers on social media can ruin your entire day with a single comment? You're not alone in this struggle, and more importantly, you're not the first person in history to face this challenge. 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius sat in his tent on the Germanic frontier, writing in his personal journal about the exact same frustrations you face today. He wrote about liars, cheaters, people motivated by ridiculous things, and individuals who seemed determined to make life difficult for everyone around them. The fascinating part? His insights from those ancient battlefield reflections can transform how you handle the most challenging people in your modern life. Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing philosophy textbooks for scholars locked away in universities. He was a leader dealing with senators who plotted against him, generals who questioned his decisions, and citizens who demanded impossible solutions to complex problems. His Stoic philosophy emerged from the real world of human interaction, conflict, and the daily grind of managing relationships with difficult personalities. Here's what makes this ancient wisdom so powerful for your life today. Marcus Aurelius and his fellow Stoic philosophers understood that people problems aren't actually people problems. They're perspective problems. When you change how you see difficult people and challenging situations, you change everything about how these interactions affect you. Instead of letting other people's behavior control your emotional state, you learn to control your response to their behavior. The Stoic approach to handling difficult people isn't about becoming emotionally numb or pretending that problematic behavior doesn't matter. It's about developing the mental tools to stay centered, maintain your integrity, and even find opportunities for growth in the most challenging interpersonal situations. When you master these principles, you'll discover that dealing with difficult people becomes less about surviving their impact on you and more about becoming the kind of person who makes every interaction better. Throughout this exploration of Stoic wisdom, we'll uncover practical strategies that you can implement immediately. You'll learn specific techniques for preparing your mind before challenging encounters, questions to ask yourself when people hurt or disappoint you, and methods for staying true to your values even when everyone around you seems to have abandoned theirs. Most importantly, you'll discover how to find genuine fulfillment through your relationships with others, rather than constant frustration and disappointment. The ancient Stoics believed that other people are our proper occupation, meaning that learning to navigate human relationships skillfully is one of the most important things we can do with our lives. They understood that we cannot avoid dealing with people, so we must become excellent at it. This isn't just about tolerating difficult personalities. It's about becoming someone who brings out the best in others while protecting your own peace of mind and maintaining your personal integrity. 1. Stop caring what strangers think about your life. You're scrolling through LinkedIn at 11 p.m., comparing your career progress to that college acquaintance who just got promoted to vice president at a tech startup in San Francisco. Your stomach tightens as you wonder what your former classmates think about your current job title. Meanwhile, you're also rehearsing what you'll say at tomorrow's team meeting, carefully crafting responses that will make you sound intelligent and competent to colleagues whose opinions shouldn't matter more than your own self-knowledge. This scenario plays out millions of times daily across America, from Manhattan apartments to Chicago suburbs to Los Angeles coffee shops. We live in a constant state of performance anxiety, desperately seeking validation from people we barely know while simultaneously claiming we don't care what others think. Marcus Aurelius observed this same human tendency over 2 millennia ago, and his insight cuts straight to the heart of why this behavior makes us miserable. In his personal meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote something that sounds almost modern in its psychological sophistication. We love ourselves more than other people, but we care about their opinion more than our own. Think about the absurdity of this statement for a moment. You know yourself better than anyone else knows you. You understand your intentions, your efforts, your growth, your challenges, and your values. Yet when a stranger on social media criticizes your post, or when someone at a networking event seems unimpressed by your elevator pitch, their fleeting opinion can derail your entire emotional state. Marcus Aurelius took this observation even further when he contemplated the foolishness of seeking posthumous fame or lasting recognition. He pointed out that people who desperately want to be remembered by future generations forget a crucial fact. Those future people will be just as flawed, distracted, and obsessed with trends as people today. The individuals whose approval you're seeking 20 years from now will be caught up in their own dramas, their own social media platforms, their own career anxieties. They won't be the wise, discerning judges of character and achievement that your imagination creates. Consider this perspective shift. If you travel back in time to meet your heroes from previous decades, you'd likely discover they were ordinary people dealing with ordinary problems, influenced by the fashions and foolishness of their era just like everyone in your time. The same principle applies to future generations who might remember your name or forget it entirely. Their opinions, like the opinions of strangers today, are filtered through their own limitations, biases, and temporary concerns. The Stoic solution to this validation trap begins with understanding what you actually control versus what you merely influence. You control your effort, your intentions, your preparation, and your commitment to your principles. You influence but don't control how others perceive these qualities. When you speak up in a meeting, you control whether you've done your research, whether you're contributing constructively, and whether you're being honest about your perspective. You cannot control whether your colleagues think you're brilliant, whether they remember your points, or whether they give you credit for your contributions. Marcus Aurelius developed a practical framework for maintaining this distinction. Before important interactions, he would remind himself to focus on bringing his best self to the situation rather than managing others' impressions of him. When you shift your attention from external validation to internal integrity, something remarkable happens. You actually become more impressive to others because you're no longer performing for their approval. Authenticity and confidence naturally emerge when you're not constantly monitoring others' reactions to your behavior. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to feedback or dismissing all external input. Wise people seek counsel from mentors they respect and listen carefully to constructive criticism from trusted sources. The key distinction lies in understanding the difference between valuable feedback from people who know you well and random opinions from strangers who have minimal context about your life, goals, or circumstances. The practical application of this Stoic principle transforms how you navigate social media, networking events, family gatherings, and workplace interactions. Instead of crafting your image for maximum approval, you focus on expressing your authentic values and genuine interests. Instead of measuring your worth by likes, shares, promotions, or social status markers, you measure yourself against your own standards of excellence and growth. When you encounter criticism or disapproval, you ask yourself whether this feedback comes from someone whose judgment you respect and whether it addresses areas where you genuinely want to improve. If the answer is yes, you listen carefully and consider how to incorporate the insights. If the answer is no, you acknowledge the opinion without letting it disturb your inner equilibrium. Marcus Aurelius understood that external approval is like chasing shadows. The harder you pursue it, the more elusive it becomes. People sense desperation for validation, and it makes them less likely to provide the very approval you're seeking. Conversely, when you're grounded in your own principles and secure in your own judgment, others naturally gravitate toward your confidence and authenticity. Therefore, the path to genuine self-respect begins with measuring yourself against standards that matter. Are you growing? Are you contributing? Are you acting according to your values? Are you treating others with kindness and fairness? Are you facing challenges with courage? These questions can only be answered by you, and their answers create the foundation for unshakable inner peace. Ultimately, the opinion that shapes your daily experience of life is your own. When you wake up each morning, you're the one living inside your thoughts, carrying your memories, and facing your challenges. Strangers may judge your social media posts for 30 seconds, but you're the one who has to live with the consequences of your choices for decades. This realization naturally shifts your focus from performing for others to performing for the person whose opinion truly determines your happiness: yourself. With this foundation of inner-directed confidence established, we can now turn to examine the daily practices that prepare your mind for challenging interpersonal encounters, ensuring that your commitment to authenticity remains strong even when facing the most difficult personalities. 2. What to tell yourself every morning before meeting people. Imagine starting your morning commute in downtown Chicago, knowing you're about to face your micromanaging boss who questions every decision you make. Or picture yourself preparing for a family dinner in Brooklyn where your critical aunt will inevitably comment on your life choices. Your heart rate increases, your shoulders tense, and you're already rehearsing defensive responses to conversations that haven't even happened yet. This anticipatory stress consumes mental energy before your day truly begins, leaving you emotionally depleted before the first challenging interaction occurs. Marcus Aurelius faced this exact challenge every morning as Roman Emperor. He knew his day would be filled with senators seeking personal gain, military commanders questioning his strategies, and citizens demanding solutions to impossible problems. Rather than allowing these anticipated difficulties to drain his emotional reserves, he developed a morning mental preparation practice that transformed how he approached every human encounter throughout his day. The practice begins with a simple but profound recognition. You cannot control other people's behavior, attitudes, or motivations, but you can completely control how you prepare yourself mentally to engage with them. Marcus Aurelius would tell himself each morning that he would encounter people who were deceitful, manipulative, arrogant, jealous, and petty. This wasn't pessimistic thinking, it was realistic preparation that prevented disappointment and emotional reactivity when people behaved exactly as people tend to behave. Here's what makes this morning practice so psychologically powerful. When you expect people to be difficult, their difficult behavior doesn't surprise or derail you. When you mentally prepare for dishonesty, encountering dishonesty doesn't trigger anger or disappointment. When you anticipate jealousy or pettiness, these behaviors become predictable obstacles to navigate rather than personal attacks that wound your spirit. The key insight Marcus Aurelius developed was understanding that other people's character flaws reflect their own internal struggles, not your worth as a person. When your colleague takes credit for your project idea during the morning meeting, their behavior reveals their insecurity and ethical confusion. not any inadequacy on your part. When your neighbor complains constantly about neighborhood issues without offering solutions, their negativity reflects their own frustration and helplessness, not legitimate criticism of your community involvement. This morning mental preparation involves 3 specific elements that you can implement immediately. First, you acknowledge that you will encounter people who operate from fear, insecurity, and self-interest. This acknowledgement doesn't make you cynical. It makes you realistic about human nature while maintaining your own commitment to integrity and kindness. Second, you remind yourself that other people's behavior cannot compromise your character unless you allow it to do so. When someone lies to you, you don't have to lie back. When someone treats you rudely, you don't have to respond with rudeness. When someone tries to manipulate you, you don't have to become manipulative in return. Their choices belong to them. Your responses belong to you. Third, you set your intention to remain honest and true to yourself regardless of how others behave around you. This means speaking truthfully even when others distort facts, treating people with respect even when they don't reciprocate, and maintaining your principles even when doing so seems disadvantageous in the short term. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the most important skill is learning to be good in a world where many people choose not to be good. This morning practice prepares you to maintain your goodness without being naive about human nature. You enter your day expecting challenges but confident in your ability to handle them with grace and wisdom. The practical application of this morning preparation transforms your entire emotional experience of difficult interactions. Instead of feeling blindsided when people behave badly, you think, "There's the manipulative behavior Marcus Aurelius warned me about this morning." Instead of taking things personally when someone treats you unfairly, you recognize their behavior as a reflection of their own character development, not an accurate assessment of your value. This preparation also prevents you from adopting other people's negative energy as your own. When you encounter someone who's angry, bitter, or pessimistic, you can acknowledge their emotional state without absorbing it into your own psyche. You become like a lighthouse that maintains its own light regardless of the storms happening around it. The morning practice extends beyond simply expecting difficult behavior to actively preparing for opportunities to practice virtue. Marcus Aurelius approached each day knowing he would have chances to practice patience, kindness, courage, and wisdom through his interactions with challenging people. This perspective transforms interpersonal difficulties from obstacles that frustrate you into training opportunities that strengthen your character. Consider how this mindset shift changes your approach to a difficult coworker. Instead of dreading their presence, you can view them as an opportunity to practice maintaining your composure under pressure. Instead of avoiding family members who always create drama, you can see them as chances to practice unconditional love and emotional boundaries simultaneously. The most profound aspect of this morning preparation is how it separates your emotional well-being from other people's choices. When you start each day committed to maintaining your integrity regardless of external circumstances, you become emotionally independent in the healthiest sense. Your mood, self-worth, and inner peace depend on your own actions and attitudes rather than the unpredictable behavior of others. This emotional independence doesn't mean becoming cold or disconnected from people. Rather, it means loving and caring for others from a position of strength rather than need. When your emotional stability doesn't depend on others treating you well, you can afford to be generous, patient, and kind even when they don't deserve it. Building on this foundation of mental preparation, we can now explore the specific technique Marcus Aurelius used when people actually did hurt or disappoint him, transforming moments of interpersonal pain into opportunities for greater wisdom and empathy. 3. When someone hurts you, ask yourself this life-changing question. You're sitting in a conference room in downtown Seattle, watching your team leader present your research findings as if they were entirely his own work. Your name isn't mentioned once during the 20-minute presentation, and several colleagues compliment him afterward on his thorough analysis. The betrayal cuts deep because you trusted this person, worked late nights to meet his deadlines, and believed he valued your contributions. Your face burns with anger and humiliation as you consider whether to speak up or let the moment pass. This scenario represents one of the most challenging aspects of human relationships: how to respond when someone genuinely hurts or wrongs you. Your initial emotional reaction is completely natural and understandable. The desire for justice, recognition, or even revenge reflects normal human psychology when we experience betrayal or mistreatment. However, Marcus Aurelius discovered a powerful technique that transforms these painful moments into opportunities for personal growth and deeper wisdom about human nature. The life-changing question that Marcus Aurelius learned to ask himself whenever someone hurt him was remarkably simple yet profoundly transformative. When have I done that? This question seems counterintuitive when you're feeling wronged because your natural instinct is to focus on the other person's bad behavior and how it affects you. However, this shift in perspective creates a breakthrough in understanding that changes everything about how these situations impact your emotional well-being. When you ask yourself, "When have I done that?" you're not excusing the other person's behavior or minimizing the harm they've caused. Instead, you're accessing your own experiences of being imperfect, making mistakes, or acting in ways that hurt others. This mental exercise builds what philosophers call empathy and what psychologists call perspective-taking. But it goes deeper than either of these concepts because it's grounded in honest self-examination rather than abstract sympathy. Think about the team leader who stole credit for your work. When have you taken more credit than you deserved? Perhaps you once accepted praise for a group project where others did significant work, or maybe you presented ideas in a meeting without properly acknowledging their sources. When have you prioritized your own advancement over fairness to colleagues? When have you been so focused on impressing superiors that you overlooked the impact of your actions on team members? This self-reflection doesn't make you equally guilty or remove the legitimacy of your hurt feelings. However, it provides crucial context that prevents you from demonizing the other person or taking their behavior as a personal attack on your worth. Most importantly, it reminds you of your own capacity for poor judgment, selfishness, or moral confusion during stressful situations. Marcus Aurelius understood that most people who hurt others aren't evil monsters who wake up planning to cause pain. They're flawed human beings operating from fear, insecurity, competitiveness, or simple thoughtlessness. When you remember your own moments of moral failure, you gain access to the same understanding and patience that you hope others will show you when you make mistakes. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught a complementary technique he called grasping the other handle. Every situation, he explained, has multiple handles by which you can pick it up and carry it. When someone wrongs you, you can grasp the handle of victimhood, anger, and resentment, or you can grasp the handle of understanding, growth, and emotional freedom. The choice of which handle to use determines whether the situation becomes a burden that weighs you down or a tool that makes you stronger. Let's explore how this technique works in practice with the workplace scenario. You could grasp the handle of righteous anger, spending days replaying the injustice, complaining to friends, and plotting ways to expose your team leader's dishonesty. This approach keeps you emotionally tied to his behavior and gives him ongoing power to disturb your peace of mind. Alternatively, you could grasp the handle of wisdom, using this experience to understand workplace dynamics better, to develop clearer boundaries about sharing work before completion, and to practice maintaining your integrity regardless of others' choices. The "when have I done that?" question also reveals important insights about human motivation that can guide your future interactions. When you recall your own moments of taking credit unfairly, you likely remember feeling insecure about your contributions, worried about job security, or desperate to impress someone whose opinion mattered to your career. These same fears probably motivated your team leader's behavior, which doesn't excuse it but helps you understand it as human weakness rather than personal malice. This understanding opens up possibilities for response that aren't available when you're trapped in anger and resentment. You might choose to have a private conversation with your team leader, giving him an opportunity to acknowledge your contributions and correct the record. You might decide to document your work more carefully in the future while maintaining professional relationships. You might use this experience to become more generous in acknowledging others' contributions to your own projects. The most profound benefit of this Stoic technique is how it prevents other people's poor behavior from corrupting your own character. When you respond to dishonesty with more dishonesty, rudeness with more rudeness, or manipulation with more manipulation, you become the very thing that caused you pain in the first place. The "when have I done that?" question helps you maintain your moral clarity and respond from your highest values rather than your wounded emotions. Marcus Aurelius practiced this technique not because he was weak or passive, but because he understood that emotional reactivity clouds judgment and leads to poor decisions. When you're consumed with anger about someone's behavior, you're less likely to see the situation clearly, consider all your options, or choose responses that actually improve the circumstances. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or accepting mistreatment without appropriate boundaries. Rather, it means responding to difficult people from a position of emotional strength and moral clarity rather than reactive hurt and anger. Sometimes the wisest response is direct confrontation, sometimes it's strategic distance, and sometimes it's patient education. The key is making these choices based on wisdom rather than emotion. In essence, asking "when have I done that?" transforms you from a victim of other people's poor behavior into a student of human nature who uses every difficult interaction as an opportunity to develop greater wisdom, patience, and strength of character. Consequently, we can now examine how this individual approach to forgiveness and understanding fits into the broader Stoic principle of maintaining personal integrity, even when surrounded by people who seem to have abandoned their own moral standards. 4. How to stay good when everyone around you seems terrible. Picture yourself working at a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Denver where the company culture has slowly deteriorated over the past year. Your supervisor regularly takes credit for subordinates' ideas. The sales team lies to clients about delivery timelines, and colleagues throw each other under the bus during weekly meetings to avoid accountability. Meanwhile, you're watching the news about political corruption, scrolling through social media filled with outrage and divisiveness, and listening to friends complain about their own workplace ethics violations. It feels like integrity has become a rare commodity, and you're starting to wonder if maintaining your principles is naive in a world where dishonesty seems to be rewarded. This situation perfectly captures one of the most challenging aspects of living according to Stoic principles. How do you maintain your commitment to goodness when it appears that everyone around you has abandoned their moral compass. Marcus Aurelius faced this exact dilemma during the decline of the Roman Empire, when corruption had infected every level of government and society. His response offers a blueprint for modern people struggling to maintain their integrity in compromised environments. The ancient Stoic philosopher Cicero told a revealing story about Cato the Younger that illustrates the Stoic approach to this challenge. Cicero observed that Cato lived as if he existed within Plato's ideal republic rather than in the corrupt reality of Rome. This wasn't delusion or denial. Cato understood perfectly well that his fellow senators were corrupt, that the political system was broken, and that moral standards had collapsed around him. However, he chose to operate according to the principles of an ideal world rather than lowering his standards to match the degraded environment he actually inhabited. This approach represents a fundamental shift in how you think about moral behavior. Most people unconsciously adjust their ethical standards based on the behavior they observe around them. When surrounded by dishonesty, they become more willing to lie. When everyone else cuts corners, they justify cutting corners themselves. When corruption becomes normalized, they gradually accept corrupt practices as inevitable. Cato demonstrated that you can make the opposite choice. You can maintain the highest standards regardless of external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius built upon Cato's example by developing a practical framework for staying good in a world full of bad behavior. The foundation of this framework rests on understanding that your moral choices belong entirely to you and cannot be compromised by other people's decisions unless you specifically choose to let them influence you. When your colleague lies to a client, that choice reflects his character, not yours. When your boss takes credit for your work, that action reveals her integrity level, not yours. When politicians engage in corruption, their behavior demonstrates their moral development, not the impossibility of honest leadership. This perspective requires you to think about goodness differently than most people do. Rather than viewing ethical behavior as a strategy for getting along with others or achieving external success, you begin to see it as the fundamental expression of who you are as a person. Your commitment to honesty doesn't depend on whether others appreciate your honesty. Your dedication to fairness doesn't require that the world treat you fairly in return. Your choice to act with integrity becomes independent of the rewards or consequences that external circumstances might provide. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the only thing in life that isn't worthless is doing what's right, and then he added the crucial next step: being patient with those who don't make the same choice. This patience doesn't mean accepting or enabling bad behavior, but rather understanding that other people's moral failures don't obligate you to abandon your own principles. When you encounter dishonesty, you can acknowledge it clearly and respond appropriately without becoming dishonest yourself. The practical application of this philosophy requires developing what Marcus Aurelius called the ability to tune out negative influences while remaining fully engaged with your responsibilities and relationships. This doesn't mean isolating yourself from people or pretending that problems don't exist. Instead, it means learning to filter information and influences through your own value system rather than absorbing everything in your environment as truth about how the world works. Consider how this filtering process works in the corrupted workplace scenario. You continue to do excellent work because excellence reflects your personal standards, not because you expect recognition or fair treatment. You maintain honesty in your communications because truthfulness aligns with your character, not because everyone else is truthful. You treat colleagues with respect because respect expresses your values, not because they've earned it through their behavior toward you. This approach creates an interesting psychological phenomenon. When you stop adjusting your behavior based on others' poor choices, you often discover that your consistency and integrity have more influence than you realized. People notice when someone maintains high standards regardless of circumstances. They may not always appreciate it initially, but they develop respect for individuals who demonstrate unwavering principles even under pressure. When you compromise your principles to match your environment, you begin a gradual process of character erosion that becomes increasingly difficult to reverse. Each small moral compromise makes the next one easier to justify. Each time you lower your standards to fit in, you move further away from the person you want to be. Eventually, you may discover that you've become indistinguishable from the people whose behavior you originally found troubling. The alternative path requires what Marcus Aurelius called focusing on what's right while ignoring what's happening outside. This means directing your attention and energy toward fulfilling your own obligations excellently rather than monitoring and judging others' failures constantly. When you encounter corruption, you acknowledge it and respond appropriately, but you don't allow it to consume your mental resources or influence your own choices. This internal focus creates a remarkable form of freedom because your emotional well-being and sense of purpose no longer depend on external circumstances improving or other people behaving better. You can find satisfaction and meaning in doing excellent work, treating people well, and living according to your values regardless of whether these choices produce the outcomes you prefer in the short term. Ultimately, the choice to maintain goodness regardless of external circumstances becomes an act of leadership that extends far beyond your immediate sphere of influence, creating ripple effects that can transform entire communities over time. Building on this foundation of unwavering integrity, we can now explore how Stoic philosophy approaches one of the most misunderstood aspects of maintaining goodness: the role of love and emotional connection in developing both personal strength and positive influence on others. 5. Why Stoics say love makes you stronger, not weaker. You're having coffee with a close friend in a bustling cafe in downtown Austin, listening to her describe her latest relationship struggles. She's fallen for someone who treats her inconsistently, alternating between affection and distance, and she's convinced that caring so deeply makes her vulnerable and weak. "I need to stop being so emotional," she says, stirring her latte nervously. "All this love stuff just makes me pathetic. I should be tougher, more independent, like those Stoic philosophers you're always talking about." Her assumption reflects a common misunderstanding about Stoic philosophy that has persisted for centuries: the belief that emotional strength requires emotional numbness. This misconception couldn't be further from the truth of what the ancient Stoics actually taught and practiced. The Stoic philosophers weren't emotionally cold individuals who suppressed their feelings or avoided meaningful connections with others. Instead, they developed a sophisticated understanding of how love and affection actually strengthen rather than weaken your character when approached with wisdom and proper perspective. Seneca, one of Rome's greatest Stoic teachers, wrote extensively about love and specifically addressed the fear that caring for others makes you vulnerable to pain. His insight cuts to the heart of why most people try to protect themselves by limiting their emotional investment in relationships. If you want love in your life, then love. This statement might sound simple, but it contains profound wisdom about how emotional fulfillment actually works in practice. The key to understanding Seneca's approach lies in recognizing the difference between loving from a position of strength versus loving from a position of neediness or desperation. When you love someone because you need them to validate your worth, make you feel complete, or solve your emotional problems, that attachment creates weakness because your well-being depends entirely on their behavior toward you. However, when you love someone because you choose to express the best aspects of your character through your relationship with them, that love becomes a source of strength rather than vulnerability. Marcus Aurelius learned this distinction from one of his most important mentors, who taught him to be free of passions, yet full of love. This phrase captures the essence of the Stoic approach to emotional relationships. Being free of destructive passions means not being controlled by jealousy, possessiveness, fear of abandonment, or desperate need for approval. Being full of love means actively choosing to express care, kindness, generosity, and affection toward the people in your life. The practical difference between these approaches transforms every aspect of how you experience relationships. When you love from neediness, every interaction becomes a test of whether the other person still cares about you enough to meet your emotional needs. When your partner seems distant, you panic. When your friend doesn't respond to texts immediately, you worry about the relationship's stability. When family members don't express appreciation for your efforts, you feel hurt and resentful. Contrast this with loving from strength, where your emotional well-being remains stable regardless of others' responses to your affection. You express care because caring reflects your values, not because you need specific responses. You offer support because helping others aligns with your character, not because you require gratitude or reciprocation. You invest energy in relationships because connection brings out your best qualities, not because you need others to make you feel worthy or complete. This shift in perspective addresses the fundamental fear that keeps many people from loving fully: the worry that caring deeply inevitably leads to devastating pain when relationships end or change. The Stoics understood that attachment to specific outcomes in relationships does create suffering, but they distinguished between healthy love and unhealthy attachment. You can love someone completely while accepting that all relationships are temporary, that people change, and that circumstances beyond your control may alter or end even the most precious connections. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself that he didn't possess the people he loved. They were on loan to him for an uncertain period of time. This awareness didn't make him love them less. Instead, it made him appreciate them more fully while they were present and reduced his anxiety about losing them. When you truly accept the temporary nature of all relationships, you become free to love without the desperate clinging that makes both love and loss so painful. The Stoic approach to love also recognizes that expressing affection and kindness toward others actually strengthens your character by giving you opportunities to practice virtue in concrete ways. When you choose to be patient with a difficult family member, you develop patience. When you offer forgiveness to someone who has hurt you, you strengthen your capacity for mercy. When you provide support to a friend during challenging times, you reinforce your own commitment to loyalty and generosity. Seneca observed that if you want to feel good about yourself and your life, you should focus on doing good for others rather than trying to extract good treatment from them. This principle applies directly to relationships. If you want to feel loved, concentrate on loving others rather than monitoring whether they love you adequately in return. The energy you put out into the world through your relationships determines the quality of your emotional experience more than the energy you receive from others. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or accepting mistreatment in the name of love. Stoic love includes wisdom about boundaries, standards, and self-respect. You can love someone while refusing to enable their destructive behavior. You can care deeply about a relationship while maintaining clear expectations about how you deserve to be treated. You can express affection while protecting yourself from people who consistently take advantage of your kindness. The strength that comes from Stoic love manifests in your ability to maintain emotional stability and moral clarity even when relationships become challenging. When you love from strength rather than need, you can navigate conflicts without losing yourself in emotional reactivity. You can support others during their difficulties without absorbing their problems as your own. You can experience disappointment in relationships without losing faith in the value of connection itself. Marcus Aurelius discovered that this approach to love creates a positive feedback loop that enhances both your own happiness and your positive influence on others. When people encounter someone who loves generously without desperation, they often find themselves inspired to love more freely as well. When you demonstrate that caring doesn't require neediness, others feel safer opening their hearts around you. In essence, Stoic love transforms relationships from sources of anxiety and vulnerability into opportunities for strength, growth, and genuine joy, creating the foundation for addressing one of the most common obstacles to this healthy approach: the destructive habit of comparing your relationships and achievements to others. 6. The hidden reason you feel miserable around successful people. Set the scene. You're attending your 10-year college reunion at a hotel ballroom in downtown Boston, nursing a drink while listening to your former roommate describe his recent promotion to partner at a prestigious law firm. As he talks about his corner office overlooking the harbor, his recent vacation to Italy, and his plans to buy a house in an exclusive neighborhood, you feel a familiar knot forming in your stomach. Despite having a decent career and stable life yourself, his success makes you feel inadequate and behind in life. You find yourself mentally calculating his probable salary, comparing it to your own, and wondering what you did wrong to end up feeling so small in the presence of someone you once considered an equal. This scenario illustrates one of the most psychologically destructive patterns that modern people regularly experience: the automatic tendency to measure your worth and happiness against other people's achievements, possessions, and apparent success. President Theodore Roosevelt captured this phenomenon perfectly when he observed that comparison is the thief of joy. However, understanding why comparison steals happiness requires examining the hidden psychological mechanisms that make other people's success feel like evidence of your own failure. Marcus Aurelius spent considerable time analyzing this destructive mental habit in his personal writings, developing insights that remain remarkably relevant for people navigating social media, professional networking, and family gatherings where success stories dominate conversations. His analysis reveals that the misery you feel around successful people isn't actually about their accomplishments. It's about the stories your mind creates about what their success means regarding your own value and life choices. The fundamental error in comparative thinking lies in treating life like a zero-sum competition where other people's gains automatically represent your losses. When your college roommate becomes a law firm partner, nothing about your own career, relationships, or personal growth changes. His promotion doesn't make your job less meaningful, your skills less valuable, or your contributions less significant. However, your mind instinctively processes his success as evidence that you're falling behind in some imaginary race where everyone started from the same position and should have reached similar destinations by now. Marcus Aurelius identified the absurdity of this competitive mindset by pointing out how little we actually know about other people's inner lives, struggles, and the full context of their apparent success. When you envy your former roommate's law firm partnership, You're envying a carefully curated highlight reel that reveals nothing about his stress levels, work-life balance, relationship satisfaction, or personal fulfillment. You're comparing your insider knowledge of your own challenges and disappointments to his public presentation of professional achievement. This comparison becomes even more irrational when you consider that you might be equally envious of your own life if you encountered it from the outside perspective that others have of you. Marcus Aurelius suggested a powerful thought experiment. Imagine that you suddenly lost everything you currently have and became someone else looking at your former life from the outside. Would you envy the person you used to be? Most people discover that they would indeed envy their former selves, which reveals how much their current dissatisfaction stems from taking their blessings for granted rather than from actual inadequacy. The Stoic approach to overcoming comparison-based misery begins with recognizing that contentment comes from appreciating what you have rather than acquiring what others possess. This principle sounds simple but requires genuine mental discipline because consumer culture constantly encourages you to believe that happiness lies in the next purchase, promotion, or achievement. Seneca taught that enough will never be enough for the person who finds their current circumstances insufficient, regardless of how much their external situation improves. Consider how this wisdom applies to your reaction at the college reunion. Instead of focusing on what your roommate has that you lack, you could practice appreciating aspects of your own life that you typically overlook. Perhaps you have more flexibility in your schedule, stronger relationships with family members, better health, more diverse interests, or greater alignment between your values and your daily activities. These advantages become invisible when you're fixated on someone else's corner office and Italian vacation. Marcus Aurelius developed specific mental exercises for combating envy and comparison that you can apply immediately when you notice these feelings arising. The first exercise involves examining your assumptions about what other people's success actually means for their overall life satisfaction. That law firm partner might work 70-hour weeks, see his children only on weekends, feel constantly stressed about billable hour requirements, and wonder if his expensive lifestyle is worth the personal costs he pays to maintain it. The second exercise focuses on identifying the specific aspects of someone else's success that trigger your envy, then asking whether you would actually want those things if they came with all the associated costs and trade-offs. You might envy your roommate's salary but not want the pressure, travel schedule, and competitive work environment that come with it. You might appreciate his social status but prefer your own work-life balance and creative freedom. The third exercise involves redirecting your attention from what others have achieved to what you can control about your own growth and contribution. Instead of dwelling on your roommate's partnership, you could focus on excelling in your current role, developing new skills, strengthening your relationships, or pursuing interests that bring you genuine satisfaction. This shift transforms encounters with successful people from sources of inadequacy into reminders of possibilities for your own development. The most profound insight from Stoic philosophy about comparison is understanding that true contentment comes from internal measures of success rather than external benchmarks borrowed from other people's lives. When you measure your worth by your own standards of growth, contribution, and integrity, other people's achievements become interesting rather than threatening. You can genuinely celebrate their success because it doesn't diminish your own progress toward your personal goals. Marcus Aurelius realized that envy ultimately reflects a misunderstanding about what constitutes a successful life. External markers like wealth, status, and recognition are poor indicators of genuine fulfillment because they depend on factors beyond your control and provide only temporary satisfaction even when achieved. Internal markers like character development, meaningful relationships, and contribution to others' well-being offer more reliable sources of contentment because they depend primarily on your own choices and efforts. This perspective transforms how you experience social situations where success stories dominate conversations. Instead of feeling inadequate, you can practice gratitude for your own circumstances while learning from others' experiences without needing to replicate their exact paths. Ultimately, the hidden reason you feel miserable around successful people is that you're using their external achievements as a mirror for judging your own worth, when true satisfaction comes from appreciating the unique value and potential of your own life journey. With this understanding of how comparison undermines contentment, we can now examine how the awareness of life's temporary nature can actually enhance your appreciation for the people and experiences you currently have, rather than diminishing them. 7. Why you cannot take anyone for granted starting today. Visualize this. It's a typical Thursday evening in your apartment in Philadelphia, and you're sitting at your kitchen table scrolling through work emails while your partner watches television in the living room. You've been meaning to respond to your college friend Marcus, who sent you a message 3 days ago about getting together soon, but you keep telling yourself you'll reply over the weekend when you have more time to write a thoughtful response. Your mother called earlier, but you let it go to voicemail because you were in back-to-back meetings and figured you'd call her back tomorrow. These people who matter most to you feel like permanent fixtures in your life, always there when you're ready to give them your attention. This assumption about the permanence of the people we love represents one of the most dangerous illusions that human beings consistently maintain. We operate under the unconscious belief that tomorrow will always provide another opportunity to express appreciation, offer forgiveness, spend quality time, or simply be present with the individuals who make our lives meaningful. The ancient Stoics understood that this assumption isn't just psychologically naive. It's the primary reason why people experience devastating regret when relationships end unexpectedly through death, distance, or irreconcilable differences. The Latin phrase memento mori literally means remember death, but the Stoic practice encompasses much more than acknowledging your own mortality. It involves regularly contemplating the temporary nature of everything precious in your life, including the people you love, the experiences you enjoy, and the opportunities you currently have available. This contemplation might sound morbid or depressing, but the Stoics discovered that remembering impermanence actually intensifies appreciation and motivates better choices in relationships. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the psychological transformation that occurs when you truly accept that you don't possess the people in your life. They are present on loan for an uncertain period of time. This perspective shift addresses one of the most common sources of relationship conflict: the entitled attitude that leads people to treat family members, close friends, and romantic partners poorly because they assume these relationships are unconditionally secure regardless of how they behave. Consider how this entitlement manifests in everyday situations. You speak more harshly to your spouse than you would to a casual acquaintance because you assume your marriage can withstand any temporary rudeness. You postpone visiting elderly relatives because you believe there will always be time later. You avoid difficult conversations with friends because you expect them to understand and wait patiently while you work through your own issues. You take your children's presence for granted, focusing more on correcting their behavior than appreciating their unique personalities and the brief window when they'll live in your home. The Stoic practice of memento mori doesn't eliminate these relationship challenges, but it provides crucial perspective that changes how you prioritize your time and emotional energy. When you remember that every interaction with someone you love might be among your final opportunities to express care, patience, and appreciation, you naturally become more intentional about the quality of attention you bring to these encounters. This awareness becomes particularly powerful when applied to conflict resolution and forgiveness. The Stoics understood that holding grudges and maintaining emotional distance from people you care about represents a form of gambling with time you cannot afford to lose. When you stay angry with a family member for weeks over a misunderstanding, you're betting that you'll have unlimited future opportunities to repair the relationship. When you avoid apologizing for your own mistakes because pride makes vulnerability feel uncomfortable, you're wagering that the other person will remain available indefinitely to receive your eventual acknowledgement. A personal story illustrates this principle with stark clarity. Imagine having a close friend who emails you on a Friday afternoon with an invitation to catch up over the weekend. You read the message but decide to respond on Monday because you want to check your schedule and give a thoughtful reply. By Sunday evening, you receive a phone call informing you that your friend suffered a massive heart attack and died instantly. The opportunity to reconnect, to express appreciation for the friendship, to share recent experiences and memories. All of these possibilities vanished in the space between reading his message and planning to respond later. This scenario, while painful to contemplate, reveals the hidden costs of treating important relationships as if they operate on your timeline rather than on the unpredictable schedule of life itself. The Stoic response to this reality isn't anxiety or paranoid hypervigilance about losing people, but rather a commitment to engaging fully with relationships while you have them available. The practical application of memento mori transforms how you approach daily interactions with people who matter to you. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment to express gratitude, you share appreciation when you feel it. Instead of postponing quality time until your schedule becomes less busy, you prioritize presence over productivity in your closest relationships. Instead of assuming that people understand how much they mean to you, you communicate your feelings directly and regularly. This practice also changes how you respond to the inevitable irritations and disappointments that occur in all meaningful relationships. When your teenage daughter rolls her eyes at your advice, remembering that she'll only live in your home for a few more years helps you respond with patience rather than taking her attitude personally. When your aging parent repeats the same stories for the 100th time, awareness of their mortality helps you listen with genuine interest rather than barely concealed impatience. Marcus Aurelius developed a simple but powerful daily practice that you can implement immediately. Before going to sleep each night, reflect on the people you interacted with during the day and ask yourself whether you treated them as if you might never see them again. This question doesn't require dramatic gestures or emotional declarations, but rather a commitment to bringing your full attention and genuine care to ordinary encounters. The most profound aspect of practicing memento mori in relationships is how it resolves the false choice between attachment and detachment that many people struggle with in their emotional lives. You don't have to choose between loving people deeply and accepting their temporary presence in your life. Instead, the awareness of impermanence intensifies love by removing the illusion of guaranteed time and encouraging you to express care fully while opportunities exist. Therefore, the practice of memento mori becomes not a meditation on loss, but a celebration of presence that transforms every interaction into an opportunity for gratitude, connection, and the expression of your highest values through your relationships with others. This foundation of appreciating the temporary nature of all relationships leads us naturally to consider how these individual insights can be integrated into a comprehensive approach for transforming your entire perspective on dealing with people in your daily life. your 30-day challenge to transform how you see people. The ancient Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced the same frustrating people you encounter every day. Liars, manipulators, credit stealers, and individuals who seem determined to make life difficult. Yet through Stoic wisdom, he discovered that these challenging relationships actually become opportunities to develop unshakable inner strength and genuine happiness. Throughout our exploration, we've uncovered 7 powerful principles that transform how you experience difficult people. You've learned to stop caring what strangers think by measuring yourself against internal standards rather than external validation. You've discovered the morning preparation technique that prevents other people's behavior from derailing your emotional equilibrium before challenging encounters even begin. We've explored the life-changing question, when have I done that? Which builds empathy and prevents you from taking others' poor behavior personally. You've seen how to maintain your integrity regardless of the corruption around you, following Cato's example of living according to ideal principles rather than compromised circumstances. The Stoic approach to love reveals that caring deeply makes you stronger, not weaker, when you love from strength rather than neediness. You've learned to escape the comparison trap that steals joy by appreciating your own unique circumstances instead of envying others' highlight reels. Finally, Memento Mori practice helps you treasure relationships while you have them rather than taking precious people for granted. Now comes the crucial step, transforming these insights into daily practice. Your 30-day challenge begins with implementing 1 principle each week, starting with morning preparation and evening reflection. Week by week, you'll build the mental habits that make difficult people manageable and meaningful relationships more fulfilling. The goal isn't perfection but progress. When you inevitably slip back into old patterns of reactivity, comparison, or taking things personally, simply return to these Stoic principles without self-judgment. Marcus Aurelius himself struggled with these same challenges. The difference lies in having tools to recover quickly rather than staying stuck in emotional turbulence. Remember that becoming skilled at handling difficult people serves a purpose beyond your own peace of mind. When you consistently respond to challenges with patience, dishonesty with integrity, and hostility with kindness, you become a positive influence that can transform entire communities. Your commitment to staying good in a world full of difficult people creates ripple effects that inspire others to remember their own highest potential. The ancient Stoics understood that people are our proper occupation because learning to navigate relationships wisely develops the character that makes life meaningful. Every challenging interaction becomes an opportunity to practice virtue, strengthen your principles, and demonstrate the kind of person you want to be. Your journey toward mastering these timeless principles starts today. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus now lives in your understanding, ready to transform every relationship in your life. If this exploration of Stoic wisdom has helped you see difficult people differently, please subscribe to Stoic Vivu for more practical philosophy that makes ancient wisdom accessible for modern life. Like this content if it resonated with you, and share it with someone who's struggling with challenging relationships. They'll thank you for introducing them to tools that can change everything about how they experience people. The Stoics believed that wisdom unused is wisdom wasted. Take these principles into your relationships today and discover how ancient philosophy can transform your modern life.